Good evening and welcome to our Business Studies webinar on the second classroom-based assessment and the assessment task. This evening we will guide you through the process of supporting students in their completion of CBA2, as well as looking toward the assessment task and also the final examination. It may be useful to have to hand the NCCA's guidelines for the classroom-based assessment and the assessment task booklet, as we will be referring to it throughout this evening's presentation. At various points throughout this evening's webinar, we will also be pausing to deal with any questions that you wish to send in. We will try to deal with as many questions as time allows, but rest assured that we will follow up with an email response to any questions that we don't get to deal with during the webinar itself. So, a reminder that the NCCA's support document titled The Guidelines for the Classroom-Based Assessment and the Assessment Task is available to download at www.curriculumonline.ie. This booklet is an essential document for teachers in preparing students for the classroom-based assessments and should be your first port of call when seeking clarification on all matters related to the CBAs and the assessment task. We will be referring to this document at various points throughout this evening's webinar. The framework for Junior Cycle places the student at the centre of the learning process and envisages a modernised curriculum across all subjects. It allows for new ways of learning and a broader range of skills to be properly assessed. The dual approach to assessment provides a valuable opportunity to embed classroom-based assessment and formative assessment for learning while recognising the role of external assessment. And so assessment is changing. In Junior Cycle Business Studies, the suite of assessments is made up of ongoing formative assessment as an integral part of the ongoing rich learning experiences, together with two classroom-based assessments, one in second year and one in third year. These classroom-based assessments, or CBAs, are complemented by the Subject Learning and Assessment Review, or SLAR meetings. The second CBA leads to the assessment task, which will be assessed and certified by the SEC, and together with the final state certified exam will constitute the overall SEC awarded grade. The record of the descriptors awarded by the teacher for each of the CBAs, together with the SEC awarded grade for the assessment task combined with the final examination, will be included in the Junior Cycle Profile of Achievement, or the JCPA. We will now remind ourselves about the changes in assessment for Junior Cycle Business Studies. There are various ongoing assessment components across Junior Cycle Business Studies. One of these ongoing assessment components is the classroom-based assessment, or the CBA. There will be one CBA in second year, and this will be a group-based business in action project. The second of the CBAs will take place in third year and is an individual presentation project. Another ongoing assessment component is the assessment task, which will take place after CBA2 in third year. And the final assessment component for Junior Cycle Business Studies is the final SEC assessment, which is the written exam that students will sit in June of third year. Of course, it is important to point out that throughout the 3 years of study at Junior Cycle Business Studies, students should be engaged with ongoing formative assessment to support and move their learning forward. As you will see here, over the course of 3 years of Junior Cycle Business Studies, students will engage in rich learning experiences across each of the 3 strands in each of the 3 years of study. This 3-year learning journey for students has various opportunities for students and teachers to check in on student learning. Having engaged with ongoing assessment across first and second year, a significant check-in on student learning occurs with the first CBA, which takes place in second year. The rich learning experience continues in third year, and it is in third year that another opportunity for students and teachers to check in on student learning occurs with CBA 2. Upon completion of CBA 2, students will then complete the assessment task, and together CBA 1, CBA 2 and the assessment task all support student learning as they move towards the final written examination paper. The awards from CBA 1, CBA 2 and the final examination, which includes the result from the assessment task, are recorded in the student's Junior Cycle Profile of Achievement, or JCPA. Tonight, we will be primarily focusing on CBA 2. Should you have any questions during the next part of our webinar, please do feel free to send them in using the Questions tab on your screen. We will be monitoring all incoming questions throughout and during this webinar, and we will spend some time later on to answer all questions where possible that have been submitted. Any questions that we don't get to deal with during the webinar, we will certainly follow up in the coming days. So let us now concentrate for a while on CBA 2, the individual presentation. This CBA is conducted over the course of 3 weeks within a 4-week window. Dates for these are issued each year from the NCCA on www.curriculumonline.ie. This webinar is being recorded before CBA 2 happens for the very first time, and the window for it is beginning on Monday the 12th of November and closing on Friday the 7th of December 2018. It is an oral communication. It is an oral communication presentation conducted by each individual student, and following on from this, the teacher will provisionally award a descriptor based on the features of quality before taking part in a subject learning and assessment review meeting, or SLAR. The SLAR should take place no later than Friday the 21st of December 2018. CBA 2 will be completed in third year over a 3-week period between November and December. It is an individual presentation, and there is a suggested range of business studies related topics to choose from. Each student will be awarded a descriptor based on the features of quality for CBA 2. There will be 3 areas of activity that each student will engage in: investigating their chosen topic, reflecting on their learning, and finally, communicating their findings using support material. In summary, students will provide a brief overview of the topic, explain their interest in the topic, evaluate what it is that they have learned, present their findings with an explanation, and finally, communicate using support materials. The process of conducting CBA 2 will involve the students selecting a suitable topic. In doing so, it is important that students are familiar with the features of quality. Then, over the course of 3 weeks, students engage in the areas of activity to complete the second classroom-based assessment. Upon completion, teachers assess the completed CBA using the features of quality to award a descriptor. This descriptor is provisional and will be confirmed by the teacher following the SLAR meeting. After the CBA 2 process has been completed, students will then complete an assessment task to discuss and evaluate their presentation and write about their experience. This will be a reflective task, and students will be required to reflect on their learning during the course of CBA 2. This assessment task will be sent directly to the SEC for marking and will constitute up to 10% of the overall Junior Cycle SEC awarded grade. Separately, the teachers and the school are free to report the descriptors to students and parents after the SLAR has taken place, and teachers have reviewed the provisional descriptors awarded. Importantly, formative feedback should also be provided to students to support them moving forward in their learning. CBA2 is an individual presentation. During CBA2 and over the course of the 3-week period, students will investigate, reflect on their research and present on a business-related topic, either directly related to a specific course content or an issue of local or personal relevance related to the business environment. This takes place over a 3-week period. Now, if you have access to the assessment guidelines tonight, please take a moment now to have a look at page 22 of the guidelines for the classroom-based assessment and the assessment task to ensure that you are familiar with the 3 areas of student activity. Please feel free also to use the question tab here to share other ideas that you may feel your students may consider. It is important to note that from the start, students should be familiar with and understand the features of quality for the presentation. And these features of quality are, of course, the success criteria by which the students' work will be assessed. So let us now look at each of these areas of activity in a bit more detail. The first area of activity that students will engage in will be to undertake original investigative work in order to find out more using primary and/or secondary research and focus on an aspect of interest within the topic. More information on this is available on page 22 of the assessment guidelines. There are some suggested potential topics, as you've just discovered perhaps on page 22 of the NCCA's guidelines booklet, and these include a field visit to a local enterprise, the investigation of a business-related story in the media, leaders in the Irish business field, investigation of the impact of an organisation on a community, consumerism, the investigation of a current economic issue, and careers in business. Many business studies related topics can be looked at from different perspectives, and students should be encouraged to consider differing viewpoints. As I have mentioned, there is guidance on some potential topics available on page 22 of the guidelines. It is also important to note that the student is precluded from presenting on his or her business in action classroom-based assessment. It is important for the student to record the source of all the information gathered in order to be able to assess its reliability and quality. Through their investigation, students have opportunities to develop critical thinking and information literacy skills as they record the sources of all their information in order to be able to assess its reliability and quality. Topics can be looked at from different perspectives, and students should be encouraged to consider differing viewpoints. The second stage of the 3-week project is when the students will then reflect on their research, reflecting on what they have learned and on their findings, in order to develop a personal opinion in relation to the topic and justify that opinion based on their original investigative work. Once the student has completed their investigative work, they should develop a personal opinion in relation to the business-related topic based on their findings. Page 23 of the assessment guidelines provide some potential suggestions, which can prompt the student to think. And again, this is not an exhaustive list, it's some suggestions. And these include things like exploring the importance of the topic for personal, local, social, or environmental relevance. Applying their knowledge, understanding, and ideas relevant to the chosen topic. Explaining different opinions related to the chosen topic where appropriate. Reflecting on what they thought about the topic before the investigation and what they think now. reflecting on whether or how their behaviour or attitudes have changed, having found out more about the topic. And perhaps this is a good time to mention that we have prepared a screencast to support teachers in the area of reflecting on research and developing informed opinions. This screencast and accompanying support documentation is available now on the Business Studies section of jct.ie. You can find it in the elective CPD page, and we would suggest that this is a valuable resource for teachers to explore the area of reflecting on research and developing informed opinions. And perhaps, Niamh, if you'd like to join us in this webinar, you might give us a brief overview or outline of this screencast and how it might be beneficial for teachers in preparing students for CBA2.
Hi David, and hello everybody. Yes David, I would advise teachers to have a look at this screencast, as there are a few strategies in it which will scaffold the student and assist them in reflecting on research and developing their informed opinions. The strategies come from the work of Project Zero, which is referenced in the screencast.
Okay.
And one such strategy is to show students an article or a diagram and ask them to reflect on the following 3 statements, which you can see on the screen. What do I see? What do I think? And what do I wonder? This strategy develops the thought process and scaffolds the student in reflecting on their learning and developing the informed opinions.
Okay, thanks very much, Niamh. And in addition to the screencast itself, there's also some accompanying documentation, a handout that goes with it.
That's correct, David. Yes, the screencast is designed as a workshop that teachers can do on their own or do collaboratively as a department, and work through the actual workshop, and they can then model the strategies in their own classroom. There are a few strategies there, so definitely one for teachers to look at, in particular for CBA2.
Okay, so that's great. Thanks very much. So that's the reflecting on research and developing an informed opinion screencast that's available on the Business Studies section of jct.ie. Okay, so we'll move on to the final area of activity, and that is where students will communicate what it is that they have learned, giving an overview of the topic, explain their interest in the topic, evaluate what they have learned, reflect on their personal opinion, and demonstrate the development of communication skills. The information should be presented in their own words and demonstrate personal understanding of the knowledge and ideas relevant to the chosen topic. A priority for this assessment is to encourage confidence in a student's presentation and communication skills. Students should be encouraged to experiment with and practice their presentation. Teacher support for the student's communication in the form of questions or interventions may be part of the presentation. Example questions may include things such as, tell me more about, or what would happen if, or indeed, I'd be interested in hearing more about, or what is another way that you might, and so on. It is important to note, though, that the purpose of such teacher questions is to support the student's communication without necessarily leading or taking over the student's presentation. Guidelines around the structure of the presentation are provided on pages 23 and 24 of the assessment guidelines. Guidelines regarding the use of support materials and time per student presentation are provided on page 24 of the assessment guidelines. Here, the assessment guidelines state that students can use a range of different support materials and tools, such as stimulus material, digital technology, tabular or graphic representation, posters or storyboard, taking into account a school's unique context and the abilities and interests of individual students. The use of different support materials to support the oral presentation is encouraged and rewarded when used to scaffold the presentation where appropriate. This is a significant aspect of the presentation, and it is assessed through the features of quality. In assessing CBA2, there are 4 descriptors: yet to meet expectations, in line with expectations, above expectations, and exceptional. And these are informed by 3 features of quality: The teacher uses the features of quality to arrive at the best fit descriptor that, on balance, reflects the student's work. When applying features of quality to a piece of work, we begin at the yet to meet expectations level, and when we are satisfied that the student's work meets and/or indeed exceeds this basic threshold, we then proceed to view the work in the context of the next descriptor level in line with expectations, and so on. And this ascending approach will ensure that we give thorough consideration to students' work at each descriptor level as we go about the work of applying the features of quality in assessing our students' work. This is the same process as that which we modelled during our CPD days. As mentioned earlier, it is essential that students are familiar with and understand these features and qualities at the outset, because indeed they are the criteria used in order to assess the student's work. When recording the student's presentations, as an aid to the teacher in awarding descriptors and subsequently for the SLAR to consider, teachers should ensure that a sample of student presentations are recorded and stored on a school-owned device. Storage of presentations must be done in accordance with General Data Protection Regulations, or GDPR, and also in line with your school's acceptable usage policy. In terms of providing teachers with support for learning intentions and success criteria, providing effective questioning, effective formative feedback, student reflection, and also in the area of reporting for effective teaching and learning, the NCCA's Focus on Learning Toolkit is a valuable resource. Each of these booklets are available online, and we would certainly encourage all teachers to familiarise themselves with them, and perhaps even as a subject department, you might look to explore each of them together. Let us now turn our attention to some of the questions that you have been sending in this evening. So, Niamh, any questions to start with?
Yes, David, lots of questions coming in, and I'm working my way through them now at the moment. Just to point out that everybody will get a response to their query, whether it's answered in the webinar, and if it's not addressed in the webinar, we will,
of course, we'll follow up on them. Yep.
We'll follow up on them. Okay, one of the issues concerning teachers tonight, David, is the timing of the CBA2, and do teachers have to stick to the 4-week window?
Okay, yeah.
Well, the answer to that is yes, we do. The 3 weeks for CBA2 must take place within the 4-week window as specified by the NCCA. Okay. And that's between Monday, the 12th of November and Friday, the 7th of December. Okay, another concern among a good few teachers as well is what happens if a student is missing? So, well, the answer to that really is that this would be a management issue at local level in each individual school, right. And different criteria would need to be taken into account. Obviously, as teachers, we all have the students' best interests at heart, and we will try to facilitate them, keeping into account the guidelines that are set down by the NCCA. And I think that's it. I'll hand it back over to you now for the moment, and I'll keep working through these, and I'll touch back in with you again
Sure.
later.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Niamh. Very helpful. And as Niamh mentioned there, we will be returning to some questions later on. And of course, anything that we don't get covered this evening, we'll certainly follow up. Okay. So now we'll have a look at the Subject Learning and Assessment Review, or SLAR meeting. Of course, many of us have taken part in a SLAR meeting as part of last year's CBA1 process. If you have, please feel free to use the question tab to share your experience last year and any pieces of advice that you might like us to share with your colleagues. But a reminder of the summary information that gives an overview of the SLAR meeting is that the Subject Learning and Assessment Review will take approximately 2 hours, with that time coming from the 22 hours of professional time. SLAR facilitators will be allocated an additional 2 hours by school management to facilitate the preparation for and the coordination of each of the SLAR meetings. Teachers will share the role of the facilitator during SLAR meetings on a rotational basis. And where there is a single teacher of a subject in a school, that teacher can be facilitated to participate in a SLAR meeting with another school. During a SLAR, teachers will share and discuss samples of their assessment of student work and build a common understanding about the quality of student learning. A reminder that teachers can access the SLAR Facilitators Workshop presentation from last year and its accompanying booklet by visiting the elective CPD section of the Business Studies page on jct.ie. Now, these SLAR Facilitator workshops are hugely popular and are a great way for teachers to familiarise themselves with the SLAR process ahead of participating in a SLAR. They also provide a very useful reference resource for facilitators in how to conduct a SLAR meeting. And now on to the assessment task. The assessment task for third year students, that is, students of third year during this academic year, 2018-2019, takes place between the 10th of December and the 14th of December 2018. The assessment task will assess students in aspects of their learning, including their ability to evaluate new knowledge or understanding, their capacity to reflect on skills that they have developed, their ability to reflect on how their value systems has changed or been influenced through their experience of the presentation. It consists of two stages. Firstly, discussing and evaluating their individual presentations. And secondly, reflecting on and writing about their experiences as presenters. The assessment task takes place over a double class period or two 40-minute single class periods. The first class period is used for preparation purposes. The second class period is used for writing up their response. The student response is written into a pro forma booklet, and the school forwards the completed student booklets for the assessment task in accordance with arrangements set out by the SEC. The mark awarded for the assessment task, up to 10%, will be aggregated by the SEC with the final examination. Key dates for CBA2, the SLAR, and the assessment task are as follows. CBA2 is conducted over the course of 3 weeks between Monday the 12th of November and Friday the 7th of December 2018. The assessment task is to be completed in the week beginning Monday the 10th of December 2018. After completing the 3 years of Junior Cycle Business Studies, students will engage in the Junior Cycle Business Studies examination in June 2019. So the final examination takes place in June of third year. It is set, marked and certified by the SEC, and there will be one examination paper set at common level. The examination will be no longer than 2 hours in duration, and during this assessment, students will be required to engage with, demonstrate comprehension of, and provide written responses to stimulus material. In any year, the learning outcomes to be assessed will constitute a sample of the 37 learning outcomes. Final grade includes the assessment task and the grade for the end of third year examination. Grading in the final exam will be as follows. Students who earn 90% plus will be awarded the distinction grade. Students who earn between 75% and 89% will be awarded a grade of higher merit. Students who achieve between 55 and 74% will earn a merit grade. 40 to 54% will earn the achieved grade, and below 40% will be awarded either partially achieved or not graded. For business studies, the overall grade as awarded by the SEC will appear in the Junior Cycle Profile of Achievement, alongside the descriptors achieved by the student in each of their classroom-based assessments. Again, it is worth reminding ourselves that throughout their 3-year experience of learning in business studies, students will be engaged and appraised through formative assessment as an integral part of the student's learning journey. So we'll now take a few moments once again to look at some questions that have been submitted during tonight's webinar. So over to you, Niamh.
Okay, David, a number of queries from teachers regarding the whole area of asking students questions. In particular, can I ask the students questions, or do I have to ask the students questions? Well, as you touched on it already and said, teachers can intervene or use questions to help in supporting the students to achieve their best. However, the teachers do need to be wary that they don't take over the presentation with questions. And also teachers should not lead the students, but use effective questioning to support the student in their communication in line with the features of quality.
Okay. And as part of the presentation is to be up to 3 minutes in duration, and those questions form part of that time?
Yeah, exactly. And I was just coming on to that, just to go back to the point that you made, it should last up to 3 minutes, and the 3 minutes includes time set aside for engagement with the audience and any forms of questions or interventions from the teacher. And that's on page 24 of the assessment guidelines, if anybody wants to look at that.
Okay, thanks very much.
Also, a few queries, teachers wondering, can several students present on the same topic?
All right.
Okay, well, David, to be honest, it's unlikely that this will happen, as there's a wide range of topics, as you already highlighted on page 22 of the assessment guidelines, that students can choose from. Really, it's anything in the business world. However, it might be useful to point out here that students may not present on the material that they prepared for CBA 1.
Yes, and I think we certainly
did
mention
that already as well.
Yeah.
Okay, just another area of concern is regarding students with special educational needs. And the information regarding this is on page 5 of the assessment guidelines. And they clearly indicate that special provision may be put in place for a student with a physical or learning difficulty to remove as far as possible the impact of the disability on the student's performance in both classroom-based assessments and the assessment task, so that he or she can demonstrate his or her level of achievement.
Okay, so I think that's fairly comprehensive in terms of what's available on page 5 of the assessment guidelines with regard to students with particular special needs.
And as you already indicated, it's your go-to document, the assessment guidelines.
Most certainly.
I'll wrap it up at this then, David. Lots of questions regarding whether there will be a sample assessment task. And yes, the NCCA will give a sample pro forma booklet, and also some forms of stimulus material for teachers to use in class with the students. And these will be issued shortly, David. So I'm sure people will be glad to hear that news. And as you already said, the assessment task occurs during 80 minutes, either a double class period or 2 single classes, a minimum of 80 minutes.
Sure, and I suppose for teachers waiting for that information, we might encourage them to join our mailing list, where we'll certainly be providing the updates as we receive them.
Yes, exactly, David. I'd encourage anyone who isn't on the mailing list to join, because we keep people informed of all the up-to-date information via that. And
teachers can do so by going to jct.ie, clicking on the business studies section, and down the bottom there is a join our mailing list button, and it's certainly a case that we will be providing the up-to-date information as we discover it too.
Perfect, David. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Niamh. So let's have a look at, given that we are talking about online supports, we'll continue with in that theme, and we'll discuss some of the online supports that are available for teachers of business studies, including the NCCA's website, curriculumonline.ie. This contains links to the business studies specification, the guidelines for the classroom-based assessment and the assessment task, which we just discussed, as well as teaching and learning support materials for the classroom and indeed for the CBAs. Of particular note here is the sample questions document. It offers a broad indication of types and formats of assessment items that might be used to assess the 37 learning outcomes. The NCCA.ie website is another of the NCCA's hugely popular and useful websites. It contains lots of information and informative resources about junior cycle, and specifically of interest to us this evening in junior cycle business studies. As we mentioned already, the focus on learning booklets are available to download from ncca.ie. So certainly one to bookmark. Of course, the jct.ie website has lots of useful information for each subject at junior cycle level. In the business studies section, we have information on the key documents, including the framework, the specification, and the guidelines for the classroom-based assessment and the assessment task. We also have lots of resources available from our various CPD days, as well as documents and resources on planning and assessment. And you will also find the screencast, which we discussed earlier on, in the elective CPD section of jct.ie under business studies. We also regularly update our news and events page, and we continuously add new resources too. So needless to say, the business studies page on jct.ie is certainly well worth a visit. And finally, again, that mailing list you can join by going to the business studies page, and down at the bottom you'll see it there, the green button, join our mailing list is there for everybody to join if you haven't already done so. So with that, we'll conclude this evening's webinar. On behalf of myself and Niamh Daly here beside me, and indeed the whole business studies team, I would like to thank you for your attendance and participation in our webinar. Many thanks to those of you who posed questions and offered suggestions during this presentation, and we will certainly follow up, as we said, with any of your questions that we didn't quite get to address during the webinar. A recording of this webinar will be available on jct.ie in the business studies section. You'll find it under elective CPD, and the full recording of this presentation will be there to download or to view. So that's all from us for this evening. Thank you again, and good evening.